It is now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Father David McCauley. David is a St. Paul native who graduated from St. Paul's Seminary in 1959. He was ordained in 1963 for ministry in the Roman Catholic Church, the Diocese of Fargo, and spent 32 years serving there as an associate pastor in Grand Forks and Jamestown. Father Dave was then asked to form a Newman community at Jamestown College, and focusing on campus ministry, he moved in 1969 to the Newman Center at North Dakota State in Fargo, beginning the director there in 1975. In 1981, Father McCauley was named pastor of the Church of the Nativity in Fargo and remained there until coming to St. Paul in 1995 to assume the role as the executive director of the Minnesota Catholic Conference. And in that position, he represented the conference at the state legislature until 2001. He then returned to parish ministry for 8 years and said he was retiring from the pastorate of St. Pascal Balen Parish in St. Paul in 2009. Some of us do retirement differently than others. Dave is back as the interim executive director of the Minnesota Catholic Conference, and he knows JRLC well. He served on its board and its executive team from 1995 to 2001. Father David McCauley is a strong and resolute voice for social justice and is given tirelessly to interfaith efforts like JRLC. Please welcome our 2011 keynote speaker, Father David McCauley.
Thank you, Doug. As I was listening to the governor, I leaned over to Pete and said, he's saying everything I want to say. And he said, that's okay, it bears repeating. So here we go. It truly is a frightening honor for me to stand here before you this morning. I have viewed the JRLC with awe since learning of its existence in January of 1995, as I was preparing to begin a new phase of ministry in my own life, responding to a call to minister in the public square as the executive director at the Minnesota Catholic Conference. And that sense of awe only grew as I grew in my own grasp of all that the JRLC is, a coalition of 4 distinct faith traditions bringing a common witness to the public square, a united voice for justice. I want to add that it's not only awesome, it's also unique. In meeting with Catholic Conference directors from around the country, I have learned that Minnesota stands alone in drawing together those of the Jewish, Muslim, Roman Catholic, and other Christian traditions to address the common good of all peoples. I consider it a blessing to be among your number, and I'm so grateful that we stand together. I join Brian in thanking all of you for your presence today and for the advocacy work that you do for JRLC. And have we any legislators here today? I guess not. So I can't thank him for being here, but that's all right. We may not always see things in the same light as those who represent us, but we do know and we believe that they, as much as we, are seekers of justice. And for that, we're always grateful to them. We who are the Joint Religious Legislative Coalition share a common ancestry and a common God. In our varied faith traditions, we are sons and daughters of Abraham, the one who, with his wife Sarah, extended hospitality to a stranger. And in that gesture, they became the forerunners of innumerable generations, right down to our own day. It's that faith that brings us, that calls us to be here today. Our God governs with equity and judges with justice. He is a stronghold for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of distress. That's the theme that brings us here today. That faith offers our challenge, our task, our ministry, to bring and preserve justice in our own day, to be the voice for justice, empowering the powerless, and seeing that none live in oppression. I hear the words fair and equal used a good deal in the political spectrum. Not so often justice. The three are not synonymous. Carelessly equated by some, they can have very different meanings. Life for many is not fair, unless we're willing to say that all starving together makes it fair, then maybe it is. But it's never just. Fairness and justice are not the same thing. Or all are created equal. Yes, but that's not to say that we're all the same. That all have the same gifts, the same limitations. And those gifts, that we each enjoy as individuals, they aren't given just for us. They're given to be shared. Let's take life itself, the first and most basic gift. No one of us is gifted with life to be lived in isolation. We are a people. The gifts given are to be shared as part of our common life together. One reaps, another sows, another markets, another packages, another purchases and resells, still another purchases and consumes. One has the gift of music, another enjoys athletic skills, one is a gifted thinker, the other a leader. Yes, we are equal and our dignity is God's sons and daughters, but we are not the same. The equality that we share is an equality of rights by virtue of that human dignity. But unfortunately, not all enjoy those rights. Not all are treated as equals. Not all are given justice, accorded justice. Our rights bring with them responsibilities. My right to freedom goes along with yours. We're called together to protect our rights. Does that make it fair or unfair? When we speak of justice for all, we usually address it as the common good. The good of one is not necessarily the good of another, certainly not of all. The voice of justice, the common good, demands that all have that which is necessary for life commensurate with human dignity. Many of those things that the governor outlined for us: food, housing, security, employment, and health care. I make no pretense of being an economist. I am not. I respect the skill of those who are. However, since the decimation of our economy in 2008, bank failures, stock price decreases, the undermining of home values, mortgage foreclosures, stagnant real estate sales, soaring unemployment rates, lack of space in homeless shelters, increasing use of food shelves and food stamps. If what I hear and read in the media is correct, as they tell us the recession is over, corporate profits and stockholder values are nearly back to normal. Bank profits have returned to what they were or beyond, but there's been no decrease in unemployment. No decrease in the use of homeless shelters or food shelves. No decrease in mortgage foreclosures. The real estate market has remained stagnant at best. During the same period, reduced income taxes for top wage earners have stayed in place. The middle class has experienced a minor decrease. Wages have remained stagnant at best, and pensions have been negatively affected. At the same time, real estate taxes, bonding bills, special assessments, and service reductions have soared. something's awry. I don't call it fairness, equality, or justice. Something doesn't add up. We do have serious financial problems to solve. Not, however, on the backs of the poor. In responding to those needs, some would suggest the charities, our churches and benevolent organizations, they should be the caretakers of those in the safety net. But we say no. We aren't asking charity, we're seeking justice. Justice demands that rights be granted. That includes empowerment for the oppressed. They are powerless. If we are to serve the common good, we must lift them from the safety net to the ability and the will to know the dignity of work, to earn a just wage, and to themselves find their skills, their gifts, and bring them to the common table. That's their right. And that's our pledge, to climb with them the ladder out of poverty, out of unemployment or employment skills, out of a lack of education. And we believe that to be the role of our government as well. The opening words of Minnesota's Constitution assert that government is instituted for the security, benefit, and protection of the people. And that is a reiteration of the words of our federal Constitution. In order to form a more perfect union, to establish justice, domestic tranquility, common defense, general welfare, the blessings of liberty, we come together. That's the purpose of government. And one of our many blessings in Minnesota and the United States is that our government is a participatory one. Again, that's why we're here today, in the public square, to participate in our government. The conservative icon, William Buckley, and I don't reference his conservatism in anything but respect, wrote a brief book 1990 entitled Gratitude. His reference point is America. I think his remarks are equally applicable to the portion of America called Minnesota. In the chapter, The Patrimony and Civic Obligation, he writes, "Those of us lucky enough to live in the United States are the beneficiaries of a culture inheritance that is impossible to fully reckon and that gives us enormous advantages. The laws and institutions built over generations that allow free people to prosper to the music that we enjoy. It is vital," he states, "that citizens acknowledge this debt to civilization. One of the ills of modern life is that we take too many things for granted." He lamented the failure to acknowledge a running debt to one's homeland. One way citizens routinely acknowledge this debt is through taxes reasonably enacted. As a nation and a state, today we face incredible budget deficits. It's the role of government to responsibly respond to these deficits, just as each of us in our individual and family situations must. But remember, we're talking about we and us, not about me and him or her. It seems our choice is to raise revenue or fail in justice, in meeting the needs of the common good. Yet those who are able are called on to share more fully, so those who lack are not, those who are able are called on to share more fully, so those who lack are not denied justice. Both state and nation used to boast a progressive system of taxation. Those who can give are asked to do so. That's how we have become who we are, or who we were. Minnesota was once first in education, first in caring for those without power. We've fallen to mediocrity. Why should the rich pay more? because they have more. I commend Governor Dayton, who certainly is known to be one of the more affluent in our state, in his determination to increase the taxes for the very wealthy, which certainly will affect him, to propose even modest increases for those in the upper middle class. Unfortunately, those opposing him are made the bad guys. And I don't know that that's fair. Would that it were so simple. We must ask, would we be any different? Or is our success, our prosperity made us all the same? It's mine, not ours. Blessings and curses alike. For all the criticisms of the financial sector, it was ordinary people who let it happen by themselves, seeking the magic bullet, investing in impossible schemes, buying what we could not afford. What would happen if for one day the rich could really place themselves in the ranks of the poor, and the poor in the ranks of the rich? Unfortunately, history suggests an unhappy response. The Great Depression of 1929 saw many of the wealthy jumping from the high bridge. And lottery winners are notorious for being broke in a few short months. It's not about me, it's about us. We were once an industrial nation. We no longer are. We have a much truncated industrial block. Some would blame it on high wages for those who worked in our factories. The high wages also purchased the goods manufactured in our factories. When one segment works against the other, all fail. When we cooperate, we thrive. Bishop Peter Rogness, St. Paul area synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, had a marvelous op-ed piece in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune last week. He suggests, in speaking of our nation, that we have changed from a people sharing a common life to several 100 million individuals who happen to live near one another. While spoken of our nation, that same sad statement is all too true of Minnesota as well. We have made government in many cases an enemy. We have lost the realization that our individual well-being is tied to the well-being of our neighbors. Is it necessary that we ask if prosperity need isolate us from one another and erode our common purpose? Through our government, we build roads and we hire teachers. We employ police and firefighters to keep us safe, establish courts to maintain order, protect our land and build parks. We must also care for the poor, the powerless, and empower them. Our individualism touches closely on our understanding the freedom of which we rightly boast in our society. Too often, and the governor spoke in the same vein, reflecting on freedom, we think only of freedom from, not of freedom for. We think of freedom from unjust aggressors, freedom from illness, freedom from poverty, freedom from exploitation. Too seldom, freedom for working together to overcome natural disasters, to defeat threats to our security, to end injustice. And let's be very pragmatic. The freedom for dealing with budget deficits without breaking the backs of the poor. That freedom brings with it responsibility for our actions. Participatory government brings not only a freedom to participate, but a call to that participation and the acceptance of that call. We enjoy the freedom, the responsibility comes with it. That's why you and I are where we are today, in this room. Two final words. I was much impressed by an article in Time magazine a number of months ago on Moses, who's the prophet for America. So impressed that I bought and read the author's book. I don't have time to go into detail, but a repeated reference reminded readers that Moses never reached the promised land himself. We won't achieve all that we hope to in this legislative session or the next, but we won't stop. Our descendants, hopefully, will achieve a lived common good in their day because we continued working towards it. And lastly, speaking of the common good, we've placed it in the context of the immense dignity of every human being. In leaving this room to continue our work together, it's imperative that we respect each other's dignity in our disagreements about solutions, that we speak respectfully, that we listen to each other, that we be open to learn from each other, and recognize that the noble art of politics calls us to compromise, to building a just society in doing so. Thank you.